Everything you've been taught about reality is incomplete. Not wrong, just deliberately filtered. From the moment you could think, you were handed a version of life that made sense only within the limits of what others believed you were ready for. But there's a voice, older than empires, quieter than thought, and more powerful than any system, that's been whispering beneath the noise your entire life. His name is Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes wasn't just one man. He was a convergence, a fusion of Egypt's Thoth and Greece's Hermes, two gods of wisdom, language, magic, and science, merged into one timeless messenger. What he left behind isn't a religion or even a philosophy. It's a set of principles, laws, universal truths. Once you hear them, truly hear them, nothing in your life will stay the same. These teachings were never meant to stay buried in dusty scrolls. They were meant to wake you up. Reality isn't what you think it is. That may sound dramatic, but it's the exact message Hermes Trismegistus passed down through generations of mystics, alchemists, and philosophers. You've been taught that the world is physical, solid, external, that things happen to you. You've been led to believe that consciousness is an effect, not a cause. But according to Hermetic wisdom, this is the greatest illusion of all. The first and most important principle Hermes ever taught is this: all is mind. Everything, matter, energy, time, space, even what you call you, arises from a single intelligent field of consciousness. The universe isn't made of stuff, it's made of thought. The material world is a projection, not the source. This isn't metaphorical, it's literal. Your mind isn't just something operating within reality. Your mind is the shaper of it. What you think, what you feel, what you believe, these aren't passive internal states. They are instructions, blueprints, codes you send out into the vast mental ocean of existence. And what comes back isn't random, it's a response. When Hermes said, "All is mind," he wasn't offering a poetic idea. He was delivering a foundational law of nature. This law changes everything, because it means you're not a victim of life. You're a participant, and more than that, you're a co-creator. The idea that your thoughts shape your experience isn't New Age fluff, it's ancient technology. Long before science caught up, Hermes understood what physicists and consciousness researchers are just beginning to explore today: that the mind doesn't emerge from matter. Matter emerges from mind. And if that's true, then the question you need to ask is, whose thoughts are shaping your life? Yours, or the ones implanted in you since childhood? Because if you've been programmed to believe that the world is fixed, that outcomes are set, that power lies outside of you, then you're living someone else's reality, not your own. This is where most people stop. They get a glimpse of this truth and immediately feel the discomfort that comes with it. Why? Because if your mind really is the origin point of your life, then you're not just responsible for what happens to you, you're responsible for how you respond, how you shape it, how you interpret it, and how you project it. It's not about blame, it's about power. And the system you live in doesn't want you to realize this, because someone who understands that reality is mental can no longer be controlled. Some truths are too controversial to even speak freely on this platform. That's why we created Insights Academy, our free newsletter where we go deeper into what can't be said here. Sign up using the link below, and for a limited time, you'll receive a free digital copy of the Kybalion, Hermes's core teachings, distilled into one book. Once you accept that the universe is mental, a switch flips. You begin to see patterns you missed before. You realize that your attention is a form of currency, your beliefs are frequency generators, and your emotions are vibrational magnets. You realize that every coincidence is a reflection, that the people you attract, the situations you face, and even the obstacles in your way are not random. They're structured by resonance. Your inner world is the mold. The outer world is the cast. Most people spend their lives trying to manipulate the outer without ever realizing it's the inner that matters. They chase success, relationships, security, believing these things will complete them. But Hermes teaches the opposite. You don't need to chase anything outside of you. You need to align your inner vibration with the truth. You need to master the mental plane. Only then does the outer begin to rearrange itself to match your inner clarity. You've been taught to believe in effort, in hustle, in struggle, but Hermeticism whispers a different truth, one that many will reject because it's too simple, too confronting. The truth is, the most powerful tool you have is already within you, the mind, a focused mind, a disciplined mind, a mind that understands its own nature and can rise above the noise of fear, programming, and distraction. All is mind. It's not a suggestion, it's law. And once you understand that, once you truly begin to live from that awareness, everything changes. Not all at once, not like a magic trick, but moment by moment, thought by thought, reality begins to shift in ways you never thought possible. This is only the first of 7 principles. But if this one alone doesn't start to rearrange your understanding of what's real, nothing will. There's a hidden symmetry to the universe that most people never see, not because it's subtle, but because it's everywhere. So constant, so fundamental, that it becomes invisible through its familiarity. Hermes Trismegistus called it the Principle of Correspondence. You've probably heard its echo in the phrase, "as above, so below," but few ever stop to ask what it truly means. It's not just a mystical proverb, it's one of the most powerful keys to understanding reality. Because if everything in the universe follows the same patterns, from the micro to the macro, from the personal to the cosmic, then the secret to mastering life doesn't lie outside of you. It lies in knowing how to read the mirror. As above, so below. As within, so without. That's the full version, and it's the real message. Your external life is not disconnected from your internal state. What's going on around you is a reflection, sometimes distorted, sometimes delayed, but always related to what's going on inside you. The chaos, the patterns, the repetition, the blocks, they aren't coincidences, they're echoes. Reality reflects consciousness. And until you understand that, you'll keep trying to fix the mirror instead of the image it reflects. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror and you don't like what you see. So you reach out and try to change the reflection, move it, push it, control it. But it never works, does it? Because the reflection isn't the source. The source is you. And that's exactly what most people do with their lives. They try to manipulate outcomes, force relationships, control situations, not realizing that what they're experiencing is the projection of their internal state. Hermes knew this long before psychology, long before quantum physics, long before manifestation became a buzzword. This law isn't about magical thinking. It's about precision. It's a diagnostic tool. If your outer world is off, it means your inner alignment is off. That's not always easy to hear, but it's always true. The principle of correspondence means that the macrocosm, the larger world, the events, the people, the patterns, will always reflect the microcosm, your beliefs, your emotions, your attention. The laws that govern the stars govern your cells. The structure of galaxies mirrors the structure of atoms, and the patterns in your relationships mirror the patterns in your own self-worth. There's power in this, but also responsibility. Because once you know this principle, you can't blame others for your life anymore. You can't blame the government, your parents, your partner, or your past. You can only ask, what is this situation showing me about myself? And that question is dangerous to the ego, but liberating to the soul, because it shifts your role from victim to creator, from pawn to participant. This principle also reveals something much deeper, that you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, expressing itself as an individual. Your thoughts don't just float around in your head, they ripple out, connect with larger fields, and return as experience. Your state of being is not isolated, it's influential. That means healing yourself is not just personal, it's planetary. And ignoring your inner world isn't neutral, it's destructive. So look at your life right now. What keeps repeating? What do you keep attracting? What kind of people show up again and again? If you're brave enough, you'll see that each of these is a message, a feedback loop. The outside is trying to tell you something about the inside, not to punish you, to wake you up, to give you a chance to change at the level that actually matters. This is why affirmations and vision boards are useless if your internal state contradicts them. You can't fake frequency. The universe doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to who you are being. That's the code Hermes left behind. The truth that's been sitting in plain sight for thousands of years. You are not reacting to the world. The world is reacting to you. As above, so below is not poetic. It's surgical. It's the scalpel you use to cut through illusion. If you want to change your reality, don't fight the mirror. Change the source. Go inward. Track the pattern to its root. Shift your internal state, and the external will follow. Not because of magic, but because it has to. It's the law. Unbreakable, unbiased, unavoidable. And here's the deeper secret. Once you live this principle, you start to see the divine intelligence behind all of it. You stop seeing yourself as a separate creature scrambling for control and start seeing yourself as a conscious participant in a living, breathing cosmos. You begin to trust the reflection, even the hard parts, because you understand they're not punishments, they're precision messages, and every message brings you closer to mastery, if you're willing to listen. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. That's not just a hermetic idea. It's a foundational truth of existence, backed now by science but known by Hermes thousands of years ago. Look around you. The objects in your room, the air you breathe, the thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, none of it is still. It only appears still because your senses can't detect the constant movement. But underneath what seems solid is a field of energy, always in motion, always vibrating. And the frequency of that vibration determines its form, its effect, and its impact. This is the principle of vibration. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your life the same way again. Hermes taught that everything is vibration, including your thoughts and emotions. Every mental state carries a frequency. Anger has a frequency. So does peace, so does joy, so does fear. And just like a tuning fork causes another to vibrate in harmony when struck, your dominant frequency shapes what you attract, what you repel, and how you experience the world. This isn't metaphorical, it's mechanical. The law doesn't care what you want, it responds to what you are. Most people spend their lives in reaction mode. They let the world set their frequency. Someone cuts them off in traffic, and their energy shifts to frustration. A negative comment online, and they fall into self-doubt. A rejection, and they drop into scarcity. Without knowing it, they've become receivers, not transmitters. Their vibration is dictated by their environment, not by conscious choice. But Hermes was clear. Mastery begins when you realize you can shift your vibration at will. You're not a victim of your state, you're its creator. Your mood isn't just a byproduct of your day. It's a signal, and like any signal, it can be tuned. You've already experienced this. Think about a time when a song lifted your spirits, when a memory brought tears to your eyes, or when a sudden realization changed your entire outlook in a second. That's the vibration. That's frequency. And your ability to hold a specific vibration, despite circumstances, is the beginning of personal power. Anyone can feel good when things are going well. But the Hermetic path isn't about waiting for alignment. It's about creating it from within. Think of your vibration like a radio dial. When you tune to a certain frequency, you receive whatever is broadcasting on that station. Tune to fear, and you receive more things to be afraid of. Tune to love, and you start to notice beauty, connection, and opportunity. Most people are stuck on a default setting, programmed by their past, their trauma, and their environment. But Hermes offered a way out. He taught that you can transmute one vibration into another. That's what alchemy really is. Not turning lead into gold, but transforming lower emotional states into higher ones. Transmuting pain into wisdom. Turning anxiety into focus. shifting despair into vision. The principle of vibration also explains why certain people affect you so deeply. You've felt it before. Someone walks into the room and their presence changes the atmosphere. It's not charisma, it's coherence. Their internal state is so aligned, so stable, so tuned, that it alters the field around them. You're not just picking up on words, you're picking up on frequency. And the same is true for you. Your energy teaches people how to treat you. Your vibration signals your boundaries, your beliefs, your expectations. Long before you speak, your frequency has already spoken. That's why nothing truly changes until your vibration changes. You can set goals, make plans, say affirmations, even take action. But if you're vibrating at a frequency of doubt, fear, or lack, you'll keep sabotaging yourself. The outside world responds to your inner broadcast, not your intentions, your state. This is why willpower alone fails, because you can't force change from a low vibration. You have to rise into the frequency of the version of you who already lives that truth. And that's the challenge. Because vibration is not just about thinking differently, it's about being different. So how do you raise your vibration? Hermes would say, begin by observing it. Know thyself. Watch your mental states. Track your emotional responses. Pay attention to what drains you and what charges you. And most importantly, choose your inputs with intention. What you watch, read, listen to, and consume are all vibrational data. Garbage in, garbage out. Sacred in, sacred out. Every thought is food for your field. Every feeling is fuel for your future. And once you start living like this, not as an idea, but as a practice, something incredible begins to happen. You stop being reactive. You stop waiting for external permission to feel good. You stop oscillating between highs and lows like a leaf in the wind. Instead, you hold your center. You radiate steadiness. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to attract anything, but because you've tuned yourself into alignment with the highest frequencies. And that's when the world begins to reflect back to you what you've already become. You don't chase. You don't control. You don't fight the current. You just tune. And tuning, as Hermes taught, is the path to mastery. You've been raised to see the world through the lens of opposites, light and dark, good and evil, success and failure, love and hate. Everything framed as black or white, right or wrong, this or that. It's how society simplifies complexity, how institutions keep control, how identity gets formed in contrast to what it is not. But Hermes Trismegistus shattered that illusion over 2,0 years ago with the principle of polarity. According to Hermetic wisdom, these opposites aren't actually separate. They're two ends of the same thing, two poles of the same essence, vibrating at different frequencies. Duality is not truth. It's a trick of perception. Consider heat and cold. They seem opposite, but scientifically, they are just varying degrees of the same thing. Temperature. There is no clear dividing line where heat ends and cold begins. It's a spectrum. The same is true for light and darkness. Darkness is not a force. It's simply the absence of light. Even life and death, as Hermes would say, are not true opposites, but phases of one continuous stream of consciousness. You were never meant to pick sides. You were meant to transcend the illusion that sides even exist. This is the trap of duality. Once you believe in two separate and opposing forces, you start fighting. You become loyal to one side and fearful or resentful of the other. You become reactive. You judge. You cling to one identity and reject its opposite, not realizing that in doing so, you become incomplete. That's how division is maintained, within you and around you. It happens in politics, in religion, in relationships, and most subtly, in the way you speak to yourself. The moment you label one feeling good and another bad, you begin a war inside your own mind. You resist, you deny, you fragment yourself. Hermeticism teaches the path of unity, not fragmentation. It doesn't ask you to eliminate polarity, but to understand it, and move beyond it, to hold both ends of the pole and see that they are connected. When you realize that hot and cold are the same substance, that love and hate stem from the same root of connection, that fear and excitement are the same vibration tuned differently, you gain power. You stop being swung between emotional extremes. You stop chasing highs and running from lows. You find your center, not by erasing contrast, but by rising above it. This is where the idea of mental alchemy comes in. If all polarities are just degrees, then any state of mind can be transmuted into its opposite. Anger into clarity, sadness into compassion, fear into power. This isn't suppression, it's transformation. You don't pretend you're not afraid. You recognize the fear, then raise its frequency. You don't fight darkness, you bring light. You don't resist what you're feeling. You understand it's on a continuum, and you can move along that line consciously. Think about how this changes your relationships. How often do we demonize people who don't think like us, vote like us, live like us? Duality encourages that. It paints the other as wrong or dangerous, creating constant conflict. But if you understood that everyone is operating on the same spectrum of consciousness, that every viewpoint, even the one you disagree with, is just another point on a shared continuum, it becomes much harder to hate. You start seeing humanity as a unified whole, differentiated not by kind, but by degree. That's how peace begins, not in political agreements, but in perception. The illusion of duality is also what keeps people stuck in cycles of self-judgment. One moment you feel strong, the next weak, and you think something is wrong. But Hermes would remind you that these are not opposites. They are part of the same path. Strength contains weakness. Wisdom contains error. The path is not to get rid of contrast, but to understand its purpose. Contrast teaches. It reveals where you are in relation to where you could be. Without it, there's no direction, no growth. But if you see contrast as division, you stay in conflict. If you see it as polarity, you gain the power to move and evolve. This principle changes how you see everything. It forces you to stop reacting and start discerning. It invites you to pause and ask, what's the degree here? Instead of, what's the side? And it makes you dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a liberated way. Because once you stop being pulled between false opposites, you become grounded, steady, impossible to manipulate. That's what Hermes knew. That's what he tried to teach. Freedom doesn't come from choosing sides. It comes from remembering that there were never sides to begin with. Most people go through life trying to change their circumstances, their relationships, their environment, thinking that if they can just move the pieces around on the outside, they'll finally feel whole on the inside. But what Hermes taught turns that idea inside out. He revealed that the only true power you have is over your own mind, and that this isn't just spiritual philosophy, it's mechanical law. The principle of mental transmutation is the hidden foundation behind every genuine change, every lasting transformation, every so-called miracle you've ever seen. It is the real secret behind what the modern world now calls manifestation, but unlike the watered-down version that sells dreams but delivers frustration, this is the original source code. To transmute is to change the nature of something, to shift it from one state to another. Alchemists were known for trying to turn lead into gold, but Hermes made it clear that the real alchemy is mental. It's about turning anxiety into peace, scarcity into abundance, self-doubt into confidence, chaos into clarity. This isn't just a mindset, it's mastery. And it requires understanding that thought is not passive. Every thought you hold sends a frequency out into the field of consciousness, and every frequency carries a pattern. That pattern attracts, it resonates, it shapes. You don't just think reality, you broadcast it. The reason most people fail at manifestation is because they try to override their inner state with external actions. They try to affirm wealth while vibrating in lack. They visualize love while vibrating in abandonment. They chase goals without aligning their mind with the frequency of having. Hermes taught that this is like trying to heat a room by painting the thermostat. It looks active, but nothing changes. You can't skip the transmutation process. You must become the frequency of what you seek, not merely wish for it. You have to shift your internal world until your outer reality has no choice but to respond. And here's the part that changes everything. You're already transmuting, all the time. Every time you react to something, every time you respond emotionally, every time you interpret a situation, you're practicing mental transmutation. You're just not doing it consciously. Which means you might be turning gold into lead instead of the other way around. You might be taking inspiration and downgrading it into doubt, turning love into fear, potential into hesitation. The mind is always at work. The question is, are you directing it, or are you letting it be directed by habit, memory, and programming? Hermes didn't ask you to believe in magic. He asked you to understand laws. Laws that are already in motion, whether you know them or not. And this law, mental transmutation, is about choice. The choice to intervene in your own thought patterns. To see an anxious spiral beginning and say, no, I'm not feeding this frequency. To catch yourself in self-judgment and shift into observation and self-compassion. To see yourself slipping into scarcity and consciously elevate into gratitude. It sounds simple, but don't confuse simple with easy. This is the path of the initiate, the one who understands that the battle is not out there, it's in here. When you understand this principle, your life no longer feels like random highs and lows. You begin to see the pattern. You notice how certain moods attract certain conversations, how certain beliefs create repeated outcomes. You begin to feel the link between your inner narrative and your outer circumstances. And more importantly, you stop waiting for things to get better. You start making your mind better. And as the mind shifts, so does the world around you. This is the bridge between spirituality and science, between the mystical and the practical. Because the mind is not just a container for thoughts, it is the architect of experience. What you dwell on becomes your direction, what you imagine becomes your reality, and what you emotionally charge becomes magnetic. Mental transmutation is not about thinking positive, it's about thinking powerfully, intentionally, and in alignment with truth, not illusion. If you've ever wondered why you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, why your goals never seem to stick, or why your breakthroughs are followed by breakdowns, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of misalignment. Your thoughts were aiming forward, but your vibration was anchored in the past. Your mind was dreaming, but your nervous system was still bracing for the worst. Hermeticism teaches you to align all levels, thought, feeling, and frequency. And when that happens, manifestation becomes inevitable. Not fast, not flashy, not dramatic, but inevitable. Transmutation doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It means having the courage to enter the fire of your own mind and forge something new. It means becoming your own alchemist. Because the world doesn't need more people chasing the next technique. It needs more people willing to master the one they already have, the mind. And as Hermes made clear, once you master the mental plane, everything else follows. You've been taught to see yourself as a body with a name, a job, a story, a history. You've been conditioned to believe that your identity is something fixed, something you carry from cradle to grave. But Hermes Trismegistus offered a truth so radical, so liberating, that it dissolves every societal label and every limiting belief you've ever inherited. According to Hermetic wisdom, you are not your name. You are not your body. You are not your thoughts or your past. You are consciousness, eternal, unbroken, and immune to death. The principle of rhythm, another Hermetic law, teaches that everything moves in cycles, expansion and contraction, birth and decay, creation and dissolution. This is not just how the seasons shift or how planets orbit. This is how existence itself operates. The same rhythm that moves galaxies also moves through your soul. And death? It's not the end. It's the pause between 2 beats, a transition point, a doorway, not a final wall. Hermes taught that the soul doesn't die. It evolves. It moves through lifetimes, through dimensions, through layers of awareness. And the body is merely a vehicle, a temporary vessel used to experience the physical plane. When the body dissolves, the soul continues, carrying its memory, its frequency, its lessons. And then, through rhythm, it returns. Not as punishment, not as a reset, but as part of a grand unfolding that far exceeds the narratives of religion or science. You are not here by accident. And when you leave, it won't be the end. It will simply be a return to source before another cycle begins. This idea changes everything. It strips the fear out of death and replaces it with awe. It reframes suffering not as senseless, but as part of a longer arc of evolution. It invites you to stop obsessing over time and start focusing on truth. Because if your soul is eternal, then the most important question isn't, what do I do before I die? But, what am I becoming while I'm here? And here's where it gets deeper. If you're an eternal soul, that means your current life, this particular arrangement of experiences, challenges, patterns, is not random. It's a mirror, a reflection of what the soul still needs to master, to resolve, to remember. The people you meet, the obstacles you face, the lessons that keep repeating, these aren't coincidences. They're curriculum. The soul speaks in patterns, not paragraphs. And until you decode those patterns, you keep getting assigned the same lessons, not as punishment, but as precision. Have you ever met someone who felt familiar even though you just met? Have you ever faced a challenge that felt eerily similar to something you thought you already dealt with? That's not a chance. That's the rhythm. That's the soul bringing you back into contact with what's still unresolved. And Hermes would tell you, don't run from it. Don't numb it. Transmute it. Because every challenge contains a hidden key. And when you face it consciously, with awareness and presence, you extract the wisdom that breaks the cycle. Modern life is obsessed with youth, with speed, with urgency. But the soul doesn't operate on the clock. It doesn't rush. It's not here to impress, perform, or collect trophies. It's here to evolve, to remember its nature. And that process is far more mysterious than most are willing to admit. The soul learns through contrast, through trial, through resonance. You attract what you are ready to understand, whether it feels like a blessing or a burden. And even when it hurts, even when it breaks you open, it's not without purpose. Because sometimes breaking is what allows light to enter. This is why Hermes' teachings feel timeless. Because they don't cater to the ego, they speak directly to the soul. He didn't offer promises of heaven or threats of hell. He offered a deeper view of life, one in which consciousness is the foundation, vibration is the vehicle, and death is simply a shift in state. You don't disappear. You return. You rise. You evolve. And this is why the idea of the immortal soul is not a comfort blanket. It's a challenge. Because if you can no longer hide behind the excuse of, I only get one shot, then everything changes. You realize your current suffering is part of a longer journey. You see that your pain, your confusion, your disconnection, they're not final, they're invitations. Invitations to wake up, to ask bigger questions, to remember that you're not here just to survive. You're here to transform. You are not the role you play. You are not the identity you protect. You are the awareness behind it all. The one who sees, the one who learns, the one who continues. You were never meant to cling to this life in fear. You were meant to walk through it with reverence, knowing that what you are is infinite. The body ends. The story shifts, but the soul remains. For thousands of years, the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus have been passed down, not through mainstream institutions, but through whispers, symbols, and secret doors. Not because they were too weak to survive in the light, but because they were too powerful to be left unguarded. You won't find Hermetic wisdom taught in schools or paraded through culture, because it was never meant to be consumed casually. It was designed for those ready to see, those brave enough to question the surface and dig into the roots. And yet, it's been hiding in plain sight all along. You can trace Hermes' fingerprints through the ancient temples of Egypt, the mystery schools of Greece, the alchemical texts of medieval Europe, and the esoteric circles of the Renaissance. Every era has had its guardians, initiates who studied the 7 Hermetic principles, not as abstract ideas, but as living truths. These were not mystics removed from the world. They were engineers of consciousness, thinkers, scientists, philosophers, artists, and even revolutionaries who understood that reality itself could be shaped from within. They knew what most still don't, that control over external systems means nothing without mastery of the internal world. And that's why the teachings had to be protected, because systems of control, governments, empires, dogmatic religions, are built on one idea, that power comes from outside of you, from authority, from structure, from obedience. Hermeticism destroys that illusion. It teaches that the real temple is the mind, the real initiation is self-awareness, and the real power is personal alignment with universal law. You can't regulate that. You can't monetize it. And you certainly can't control someone who lives by it. So instead of fighting it, they buried it, not by erasing it, but by reframing it. The alchemists were branded as sorcerers, the mystics as heretics, the seekers as madmen. And yet their work continued, in coded manuscripts, in symbolic art, in initiation rituals hidden behind layers of metaphor and myth. The Emerald Tablet, the Kybalion, the Tarot. Even parts of the Bible and the Quran carry fragments of Hermetic thought, veiled beneath allegory. Because truth always finds a way through, even when it's not allowed to speak directly. The torch of knowledge passed hand to hand, century after century, waiting for moments like now, when more people are ready to remember than ever before. This resurgence you're witnessing, this global hunger for ancient wisdom, it's not accidental, it's a response. A backlash to the mechanistic, reductionist worldview that's left so many people empty, numb, and disconnected. It's not that modern science or religion are inherently wrong, it's that they're incomplete. They focus on parts of the truth, but Hermeticism dares to show the whole. Mind, body, spirit, thought, frequency, matter. Nothing separate, nothing random, nothing irrelevant. It reweaves what culture has unraveled, the sacredness of your own consciousness. And maybe you've felt it, that strange sense that you've heard this before, that these principles aren't new to you. That's not your imagination. That's recognition. Hermetic teachings don't teach you something foreign. They remind you of what you already know but forgot. They awaken a kind of inner memory, something deeper than intellect. And that's what the mystery schools always aim to do. Not inform, transform, not hand you facts, but crack you open to direct experience. The reason you haven't heard more about Hermes isn't because he was unimportant. It's because he was too important. Because when people start living by these principles, they stop being predictable. They stop being exploitable. They begin to see through the game, through the noise, through the distractions designed to keep them small. And that kind of awakening isn't safe for the system, but it's freedom for the soul. Even now, Hermetic knowledge lives on, not just in books, but in those who choose to embody it, in the quiet revolution of self-awareness, in the conversations between seekers, in the moments of clarity when illusion fades and truth becomes visible. You don't need to be initiated into a secret society to access this wisdom anymore. The gates have opened. The torch is in your hands. What you do with it, though, is still your choice. Knowing the principles is not the same as living them. That's the trap most people fall into. They collect spiritual ideas like souvenirs, post about alignment, talk about vibration, quote Hermes, but their lives don't change. Why? Because transformation doesn't come from knowledge. It comes from application. Hermeticism was never meant to be something you believe in. It was meant to be something you use. And if you're not applying these principles in your thinking, in your choices, in your responses to life, then they're just words, dead truths. And dead truths can't wake you up. The Hermetic path demands participation. You're not just reading a philosophy, you're standing in front of a mirror. Because each of the 7 principles holds a question, and that question is always directed inward. Are you taking responsibility for the reality you're projecting? Are you reading the reflections in your life instead of blaming the mirror? Are you shifting your frequency when you feel low, or are you waiting for the world to change before you do? This is the difference between a spiritual consumer and a spiritual practitioner. One observes, the other embodies. Take the principle of mentalism. All is mind. You could read that 1,000 times, nod your head, even feel inspired. But the real test is what happens the next time your thoughts spiral into fear. The next time you're triggered, when scarcity creeps in, when resentment knocks. Do you catch the thought and choose a higher one? Do you transmute the emotion or let it carry you down into reaction? Hermes gave you the blueprint. He didn't say you'd always feel like using it. He said that's the only way to master this life. And mastery doesn't come with mood. It comes with discipline. Discipline of mind. Discipline of energy. Discipline of perception. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about catching yourself when you slip into passivity, when you give away your power to the news, to a person, to a narrative. It's about asking, what principle am I violating right now? Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? The truth is, you are always operating within these laws, whether you acknowledge them or not. So the real question becomes, are you using them consciously, or are they using you? Most people want freedom without responsibility. They want the benefits of spiritual awareness without the cost. But Hermes made it clear, power and responsibility are twins. You can't have one without the other. And when you start living these teachings, not memorizing but embodying, life stops feeling random. You start seeing the feedback loops. You recognize how every thought creates your atmosphere, how every vibration creates momentum, how every emotional pattern either opens or closes the path in front of you. You start living in rhythm, not resistance. That's when people around you start noticing something different. They feel it. You're calmer, but not passive. Grounded, but not rigid. Clear, but not arrogant. Your energy becomes coherent. You become a tuning fork. And the world starts to respond differently, not because it changed, but because you did. That's the invisible revolution, the inner rebellion. Not against the world, but against your own conditioning. And it's not loud, it's steady, it's precise, and it's undeniable. But don't mistake this for a shortcut. Hermetic living is not about bypassing pain or pretending to be positive. It's about learning to use pain as a teacher, to recognize contrast as a compass, to meet life with awareness instead of resistance. That's how you begin to feel aligned, not because things are always going your way, but because you know how to navigate even when they don't. You stop flinching at discomfort. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop outsourcing your peace. And once that happens, something else opens up. You realize you're no longer playing the same game. You're not running the old programs. You're not reacting to the world. You're composing it from the inside out. That's what Hermes meant when he said, "The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding." It's not that the truth is hidden. It's that most people aren't ready to hear it, because hearing it means changing, and change is uncomfortable. But freedom lives on the other side of that discomfort. Every time. What you do with these principles now is everything, because the laws are already in motion. You're already manifesting. You're already vibrating. You're already reflecting. The only difference is whether you're doing it with awareness. And if you're not, then nothing will change. But if you are, then nothing can stay the same. There's a reason this resonates. A reason it doesn't feel like something you're learning for the first time, but like something you're remembering. That's the nature of Hermetic wisdom. It doesn't just inform the mind. It reawakens the soul. It stirs something ancient in you, something buried beneath years of noise, doubt, distraction, and false identity. Because deep down, you've always known. You've known that reality is more than what you were taught, that your life holds more meaning than the systems you were handed. that your mind is more powerful than the world wants you to believe. This path isn't about becoming someone new. It's about undoing who you were never meant to be. It's about peeling away the layers of programming, fear, and imitation to return to your original essence. The self beneath the story, the presence beneath the persona. You're not here to follow rules. You're here to follow the truth. You're not here to obey what's been passed down unexamined. You're here to look with clear eyes and choose, consciously, deliberately, with awareness. You were born into a world that teaches you to forget your power, your intuition, your connection to the cosmos. And so most people grow up fragmented, living on autopilot, chasing approval, avoiding discomfort. They trade their inner compass for external permission. They shrink to fit into systems never designed for their expansion. But not everyone stays asleep. Some begin to feel the pull, the friction, the discomfort of living a life that doesn't match who they truly are. And when that tension becomes too loud to ignore, they begin the return. That's what this journey is. Not a rebellion against the world, but a return to the self. Hermes didn't create these truths. He revealed them. He offered a map, not a destination. The 7 Hermetic principles were never meant to be dogma. They were meant to be a framework, a mirror, a way to understand the design of reality and your place within it. But the teachings are only the beginning. They're the spark. You are the fire. What you do with them is what determines whether your life changes or stays a loop of old habits dressed in new language. There will be days when you forget. That's okay. Remembering is a practice. Embodiment takes time. You're not here to perform your awakening for others. You're here to live it, even if no one understands. Especially then, because the real shift doesn't happen when the world validates your path. It happens when you no longer need it to. That's freedom. Not detachment from the world, but alignment within yourself, regardless of the world. These principles will meet you where you are. When you're lost, they will reorient you. When you're reactive, they will ground you. When you're overwhelmed, they will simplify the chaos. But only if you use them. Not just once. Not just when it's convenient, but consistently, quietly, unapologetically. Because truth doesn't need to shout to be powerful. It just needs to be lived. And when you live it, you become something rare. You become stable in a world addicted to drama, clear in a world clouded by confusion, free in a world built on illusion. You become the embodiment of the principles, not the echo of ideas. That's when the teachings stop being theory and start becoming you. That's when the shift happens, not outside, but within. The truth is, the real you doesn't need fixing. It needs remembering. And the moment you stop chasing, stop performing, stop waiting for permission, you begin to remember that you are vibration, that you are consciousness, that you are eternal, that you are not separate from this universe. You are its expression. Hermes didn't give you something you were missing. He gave you a lens to see what was always there. And now, the choice is yours. You can close this and go back to the loop, back to the noise, back to the version of life that keeps you small, reactive, and dependent. Or you can take what's been stirred in you and turn it into practice, into presence, into power. That's the difference between knowing the path and walking it. This isn't the end. This is the invitation. If you haven't already, join Insights Academy. It's where we go deeper into the teachings, into the practice, into the parts of this journey we can't share here. You'll receive exclusive insights, real-world application tools, and a free digital copy of the Kybalion, not as a reward, but because if you're serious about this path, you need to study the original source. Don't let this be something you forget tomorrow. Let it be the spark that changes everything. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it,"